session of the United Nations General Assembly. Heads of State and Government, Heads of Delegations, Your Excellency, United Nations Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of His Excellency Obiang Nguema Obiang, President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, allow me first of all to congratulate His Excellency Philemon Yang upon his unanimous election as President of this 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. And I wish also to congratulate the other members of the Bureau. We can assure them that they will have the full support and cooperation of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea throughout their presidency. In the same vein, we would like to commend His Excellency Mr. Dennis Francis, the outgoing President, whose presidency saw the achievement of many important resolutions that bear witness to his brilliant leadership and also his decisive dynamism that he was able to show during his term in office. President, the topic for this 79th session of the General Assembly states as follows: leaving no one behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for present and future generations. That is a theme that is very pertinent given the current state of affairs around the world, including major global challenges such as wars, the existence of armed groups, terrorism, crises brought about by the effects of climate change, organized criminal gangs, the possibility of emerging health crises, discrimination, and the food crisis as a result of armed conflicts that trigger it or may lead to hunger in different countries. Indeed, this backdrop requires us all to recall the need and importance of giving greater emphasis to multilateralism and international cooperation. These are crucial if we are able to overcome these global challenges that humanity is currently facing. We also must promote sustained economic growth and sustainable development. This pursuant to the relevant resolutions of the General Assembly, as well as recent conferences and summits held under the aegis of the United Nations. Equatorial Guinea has an unwavering stance vis-à-vis the conflicts that are currently raging throughout the world. We are clear about the need to prioritize the quest through all means to ensure the prevalence of peace throughout the world by using preventive diplomacy, negotiation, and inclusive dialogue at all times to put an end to these conflicts. We call upon those countries that are immersed in the current conflicts and all governments who directly or indirectly are involved in said conflicts as a result of geostrategic, economic, neocolonial or other interests, we call on all of these countries to prioritize dialogue, and inclusive negotiations in a realistic and pragmatic manner so as to resolve these conflicts. The proliferation of so many conflicts around the world is further proof of the obsolescence, incapacity, and inefficiency of the United Nations Security Council today. What we are currently seeing in terms of what this decision-making body is able to do is ultimately the struggle as a result of geostrategic interests that make it even more difficult for unanimous decisions to be taken by this body to resolve these conflicts and to alleviate the suffering of people and the loss of innocent lives. That is why there is an urgent need to reform the Security Council. We must reform it so that we put an end to its obsolete composition, which dates back to 1945, and that obtains still today, which means that Africa is the main victim of a historic injustice and the lack of implementation of international law, because Africa is the only country that does not have permanent representation on the Security Council, the only continent that does not have permanent representation on the Council. Africa, in the context of the Azawini Consensus and CERT Declaration, has for more than 2 decades been calling for this injustice to be corrected. We are calling for Africa to be given 2 permanent seats with all the relevant prerogatives and rights reserved to members of this category. We are also calling for 5 additional non-permanent seats on the Council. We hope that the contacts that there are between the permanent members and the African Union Committee of 10, C10, to address this issue, we hope that they will reach satisfactory outcomes that will be of benefit to all stakeholders, so that ultimately we will end up with a Security Council that is able to promote a fairer, more peaceful, equitable, and prosperous world for all. President, Equatorial Guinea is deeply concerned by the increasingly serious situation that countries in the Sahel are experiencing. This has very deleterious repercussions for the development of these countries, and it directly and indirectly affects countries in the sub-region as well. This state of affairs is the result of the interference, pressure, and blockades applied on countries of the Global South by some other countries. The only aim here is to try to destabilize the countries and to paralyze the efforts of African countries to ensure that their people can prosper. There is no country in the world that is perfect domestically. However, some countries have attempted to be judges and arbiters, to intervene in and lecture other countries, which are nevertheless sovereign. They interfere in the domestic affairs of other countries with clear meddling. All countries in the world are sovereign, and they therefore have the right to decide with which country to maintain relations and to sign bilateral agreements that would benefit their respective governments and peoples. President, we fail to understand why the embargo on Cuba has not yet been lifted. The economic, commercial, and financial blockade on that country, which has gone on for various decades, must be lifted. Equatorial Guinea calls for the embargo on Cuba to be immediately lifted, and also for this country to be taken off the infamous lists of states that are alleged to be sponsors of terrorism. Lifting this embargo is even more necessary now, because we have just adopted by consensus the Pact of the Future, and this states that we will leave no country behind. It is crystal clear that African economies can become major actors in global supply chains. They can make use of their vast resources and raw materials which are necessary for advanced technologies and their own consumption markets, which are only growing. That is why Africa deserves particular attention in terms of efforts and initiatives to support and finance development. The commitments to finance the sustainable development must be honored so that the goals contained in the UN 2030 agenda can be implemented, and so that we can implement the goals contained in the 2063 agenda of the African Union and leave no one behind. Equatorial Guinea is committed to promoting and protecting human rights as a global issue. This includes the plan for children's rights to eliminate racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and relevant and related forms of intolerance, the rights of persons with disabilities, the rights to food, housing, countries' rights to use and commercialize their natural resources to meet their people's needs. Against this backdrop, we also need to consider humanitarian rights. We are seeing these rights being violated systematically in the ongoing conflicts. People in the conflict zones are being deprived of the humanitarian aid that they so sorely need, both in terms of food and healthcare. Equatorial Guinea wishes to make clear its major concern about the crisis that Haiti is experiencing. We think there needs to be an in-depth analysis about the chronic situation that this brother country is in, so that a sustainable solution can be found for it. That is why we will continue to propose holding a United Nations International Conference for Haiti. I conclude my statement by reiterating our congratulations to our brother, His Excellency Philemon Yang, and we would like to wish him the best of success during his presidency at this session of the General Assembly. Again, we assure him of the full support of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Vice President in charge of National Defense and State Security of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Uduch Sengabao Senyor, Vice President and Minister of Justice of Palau. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres, President Philemon Yang, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ali, and warm greetings from Palau. Mr. President, allow me to begin by congratulating you on your election as President of the 79th General Assembly session. We also extend our deep gratitude to former President Dennis Francis for his leadership over the past year. And to Secretary General Guterres, we commend you for your tireless efforts in advocating for a more secure, prosperous, and sustainable world. It is this shared vision that unites us today. This year, Palau proudly celebrates 30 years of independence. On October 1, 1994, Palau became a sovereign nation, and shortly thereafter, the 185th member of the United Nations. To honor the journey that has brought us here, we have chosen the theme, Ar'ad A'otil Agaramalil Belau. The people are the anchor of Palau's conservation and identity. This phrase encapsulates what has sustained us through decades of both challenges and progress. Our people are the foundation of our efforts to protect our environment, culture, and way of life. This was further underscored during our voluntary national review, VNR, presentation that was done this year, which centered around the theme, harnessing our cultural heritage to build back better for a sustainable future. It highlighted the pivotal role of our culture and people in shaping a future that not only fosters development and enhances quality of life, but also safeguards our natural resources, homes, and the environment that has sustained us for generations. Mr. President, Palau begins its pursuit of equality with a critical role that women play in our society. It is crucial to leverage our recent advancements and collective experiences. This was highlighted at the first ever meeting of women in elected leadership held in Palau on September 20th, 2023. Over the past 4 years, we have undertaken initiatives that empower women in their traditional roles, such as the keepers of the Masai, Tarapach, enabling them to scale their entrepreneurial ventures and raise their profiles. These efforts are giving our women a pathway into entrepreneurship and business, amplifying their voices in new arenas. Food security is central to Palau's long-term resilience. We have set a national goal to reduce food imports from 80% to 60% by 2030. By promoting local